And good Friday, everybody. Welcome into the First Call podcast. Jeremy Plonk alongside my friend Jeff Siegel, my handicapping cohort, as we get set for the Breeders' Cup, representing First Bet and Express Bet here. Fans, we want to remind you to get a look at the access guide to the wager guide for the wager guide for the Breeders' Cup. Easy for me to say as we get started here on the Friday show. Breeders' Cup wager guide is live now from First and Express Bet. Be sure to check that out. Go to the main pages, the blog pages of Express Bet or First Bet, and you'll find it there. Or just simply type in first.com/guide, 1st.com/guide. First.com/guide will get you to the Breeders' Cup wager guide. Tons of horse profiles, stats, trends already in there. Some previews of all 14 divisions, the scene setters, the handicappers who will be looking at those. And then we'll update them with final picks coming up next week after the draw on Monday. So, Jeff, we're right around the corner from the Breeders' Cup draw. Workouts are in force right now at Santa Anita, across the country as well. In Kentucky, a lot of big workouts this morning. Wet conditions in Kentucky today, so some work's kind of being maneuvered around. And in Southern California, it's getting that time. The Japanese horses are now out of quarantine. They're on the track, and a lot moving and shaking towards the Breeders' Cup.
It is, and you mentioned the first Breeders' Cup guide. Remember back 30 years anyway, about August, the Street and Smith College Football magazine would come out, and you run to the drugstore to pick it up. Well, that's what this is for the Breeders' Cup. All the stats, all the preliminary information that we have. It's not the end all. The end all is going to be next week, next Tuesday, when the selections show up. But this starts it off pretty good, and it's free. It's easy to download. Tons of information, good previews, good workout analysis, and more to come next week. So the first of two, I would suggest. And we'll be updating it every day. So you can always check back for that. Very eager for a week from Saturday. But this weekend's got some good gambling as well. Hopefully we can make some money this weekend and then parlay it to the Breeders' Cup.
On the First Call podcast here each week, we handicap 8 stakes races, so we'll show you those in just a minute. Yeah, you mentioned the old Street and Smith magazines and stuff. I didn't like the regional covers back in the day because where I grew up, there'd be like Todd Blackledge or Kurt Warner from Penn State on the cover. I didn't want to see those guys, So we've got the headliners for you on the cover of this year's wager guide and all the headliners inside. What a European contingent we have this year, and Japanese contingent. Ushpa Tesoro, the Dubai World Cup winner from Japan, just a really interesting cast of international runners. And, we're going to see who shows up here off the plane from the UK, but the pre-entries look awfully, awfully salty for the Breeders' Cup. For the benefit of those of you watching on YouTube, thanks. Hit those like buttons, and those on Twitter, make sure to repost us and get the word out on the podcast. For those of you listening on our typical audio channels, here's the lineup of races that Jeff and I are going to handicap over the next 30 minutes or so. From Belmont at Aqueduct on Saturday, it's the repositioned Mother Goose Stakes, as well as the 49er. At Keeneland, closing day Saturday, everything must go. It's mandatory payouts on Saturday. The Bowman Mill, the Bryan Station, and the Fayette are the 3 stakes races on the program on Saturday. The Bryan Station, a turf race, the other 2 on the main track. At Santa Anita, the Lure, it's got to be on the turf if it's the Lure. That's the feature race on Saturday. And then Sunday, Churchill Downs has its second Stars of Tomorrow card. They had one during the September meet. They'll have their final one coming up on Thanksgiving weekend. But the middle of the Stars of Tomorrow programs will be opening day at Churchill for their autumn meet. The Rags to Riches for the fillies, the Street Sense for the colts, both those on the main track. So we've got 8 stakes races to get into, Jeff Siegel. Let's start with our handicapping them. We're going to go to Aqueduct for the Mother Goose Stakes. This race for decades was a Belmont Park fixture. Of course, now it's the Belmont and Aqueduct meet, but the Mother Goose we're used to seeing like summertime, it's like kind of a prep for the Coaching Club Oaks or one of those races. Now it's positioned late in the year, and the 3-year-old fillies in here past the cotillion used to had to go just basically to the Breeders' Cup and take on the older horses. We're going to see Pretty Mischievous, this year's leader in the 3-year-old filly division, try that in the Breeders' Cup this staff. But this race got some of the either late bloomers or second tier type 3-year-old fillies, and it turned out not to be that bad of a field for a field of 7.
Yeah, it's kind of like the NIT for 3-year-old fillies.
Yeah,
Not quite good enough to go to the big dance at Santa Anita, but there's still $250,000 being offered here, and grade 2 status,
Mhm.
which is good for this field of 7. I don't know, Mother Goose in late October. I mean, it's kind of like, what are we on, Southern Hemisphere time now? I'm all confused. But I'm not confused about the logical top pick here is Zajira. This is a developing daughter of Nyquist. She is listed at 6-5 on the morning line, and she's won 3 out of her last 4. Most recently, she won an overnight race at Churchill, and she earned a whopping 98 Buyers speed figure, which if she were to be able to repeat that in the Breeders' Cup distaff, she would at least hit the board. So she's not that far removed. And what I'm looking forward for her in this race, Jeremy, isn't so much as a gamble as it is to see if she's ready to, as a 4-year-old, step into the higher end of the division. And I think she might be capable of doing that based on what I saw at Churchill Downs last time out.
And who knows what we get out of Julia shining in this particular spot. She's had some good efforts, including the Demoiselle last year over this track at Aqueduct. But the impeccable bred daughter of Curlin and Dreaming of Julia just really last time out, nothing at all. Eased in the Alabama Stakes going the 1.25 miles. That was her only start since April. We don't know what to make of her. Is she kind of restarting and recalibrating, or is this one of those where, she's just not going to get it back? You never know with the fillies.
Well, she's never really run fast or earned a good number. She's running some very good races. Her resume, I think, looks a lot better than she really is. Unless she picks it up now as a 4-year-old, she's still 3, so there's still time. Bred like she is, she's not really supposed to be any good, or at least as good as she's supposed to be, until maybe older. And maybe she'll step forward here over a track that she likes, although when she won the Demoiselle, it was over a sloppy track. I don't know what kind of weather. I don't think they're supposed to have any rain this weekend. But yeah, I mean, she could, the light switch could come on and allow her to be competitive. But the light switch has already gone on for Zajira. Yeah, I mean, she's really, really good, and I think she's going to continue to get better.
Let's take a look at her last start when she just dominated the Seneca Overnight Stakes.
They're off the turn. Kijera cut loose on the outside, and she sweeps to the lead. Kijera, just like that, in front by 3. She's looking lucky, grudgingly giving way. Text is third outside. Sabra Tough is 4th. No doubt about first. It's Kijera in a romp. Wins by 6 lengths in the end and was geared down doing so.
From the Mother Goose at Aqueduct, we go to Saturday's 10th race at the Big A. It'll be the 49er Stakes, and the 49er here is a mile, grade 2 on the main track. This would be a prep for the Cigar Mile coming up in November over this track in Grade 1 company. Ever So Mischievous, Jeff, is a winner from Churchill, the sister race, or the brother race to what we just saw in the Seneca Overnight. Ever So Mischievous, the 3-year-old, won the Harrods Creek nicely last time out. Is he the horse to beat in this one?
I think so. Here's another colt that looks like he's on the verge of becoming a good, really good colt, and he should make a good 4-year-old. I love his speed figure pattern, at least based on the Buyers. He's gone from 90 to 91 to 91 to 93, and then most recently a 95. He's got great tactical speed, but he switches off beautifully. He presses the pace. He doesn't have to go to the front. He can stalk, pounce, and go. And at a 1-turn mile, which he got beat in his only previous start, but that was at Ellis back in June. He's a better colt now. I think he's got a chance here to handle this field. I just like the progression from Brad Cox, and I expect another forward move. This is a good field. I mean, there's some solid horses in here, proven horses, and he's going to have to continue his improving pattern, but I think he will. I like Ever So Mischievous to step it up and win again.
Let's take a look back at his last in the Harrods Creek.
Ever So Mischievous grabs the lead right off the turn. Bouncer fights back toward the rail. Bourbon Bash is switched out, coming with a late run. Mount up determinedly, and the loyal customer 1 furlong to go. And it's Ever So Mischievous who dashes away. Bourbon Bash fully extended, determinedly up into 3rd, down to the wire. Ever So Mischievous scores by 2.5 in the end, and Bourbon Bash was 2nd.
So Ever So Mischievous will make the trip from Kentucky to New York in that same pattern, but denying the trip is Film Star. This is a horse who was entered in the Fayette and to run here at the Aqueduct in the 49er for Linda Rice. They are going to scratch out of the Fayette, according to Dave Grenick from Racing Form. So expect to see Film Star in this spot in the 49er as Ever So Mischievous steps up and takes on older horses for the first time, including Accretive, who last time ran second in the Vosburg behind Cody's Wish. So obviously some solid company lines there. And this is a pretty good field for the grade 2 $300,000 purse. Field of 8 for Saturday's 49er Stakes, Belmont at Aqueduct. All right, next up, we will go to Keeneland on Saturday. Want to remind you that Keeneland's closing day card Saturday. Today's action at Keeneland also includes a couple stakes races on the card. So Friday at Keeneland, you've got dual stakes action with the Valley View and the Myrtlewood Stakes. And then the Saturday races that we're going to handicap include the Bowman Mill, the Bryan Station, and the Fayette. A couple of those part of the late pick 4. And remember, when you play the late pick 4 at Keeneland each and every day of the fall meet, you get $2,000 hit and split when you hit that pick 4 when you bet with First Bet and Express Bet. So whatever you take home pari-mutually in that late pick 4 at Keeneland, you'll get your share of $2,000 split with other winners equally on the platforms of First Bet and Express Bet. So add to your winnings when you play the late pick 4 with Keeneland. The Bowman Mill Stakes for 2-year-old colts. We talked about the Myrtlewood being offered on the Friday card. The Myrtlewood is the 2-year-old fillies at 6 furlongs. These races were added to the Keeneland Fall Stakes schedule 2 years ago. Third edition of these races now as we come back with the Bowman Mill Stakes. Jeff, we've got one in here that we've seen before in our podcast. Royal Slipper's a horse that we featured as a potential star of tomorrow a couple weeks ago when he won opening day at Keeneland. The interesting thing about Royal Slipper's opening day win at Keeneland was he was the only horse to win on the front end that day. Speed collapsed all day, and he just ran off and hit in the debut for Wesley Ward. Let's give fans a look at that, and we'll talk about the chances of Royal Slipper now stepping up in the stakes company.
Slipper opens up here on a 4-length advantage coming into the final furlong now by 5. Back to Loveland in second. Chilled is in third. Tanya Showers is in fourth. Charlotte's Approval to fifth. Final furlong for Royal Slipper. John Velasquez aboard, 16th to go. A 6-length lead back to Loveland. It is Royal Slipper. Royal Slipper, much the best here with Loveland home second. Tanya Showers across the wire in third position.
He was the first 2-year-old colt really to show at the meet in the maiden special weight ranks, and he still might be the best one we've seen. This was pretty impressive.
Boy, was it ever. You mentioned the rail. I remember watching the race or leading up to the race. He was getting action. It was like, I think he can run type of action, but I'm not really sure, and I don't like the rail anyway. So he ended up going off at 3-1, and 50 yards out of the gate, you'd say to yourself, okay, he wins.
It was 3-5 out of the gate.
Yeah. Top the gate. What I loved about him is he showed really good speed, and then midway he kind of switched off. Like, okay, you want me to relax? I will. And then he rebroke in the upper stretch. Beautiful mover, and one going away from the rail, which was, as you pointed out, death on that day, and he still shook it off. It's like winning from the rail at Del Mar. You just don't do it, and he did it so easily. Wesley Ward wheels him back in a stake, which we talked about the possibility of him doing. Didn't know he'd come back relatively quick, but I guess 3 weeks would be okay. And the thing is, here's what confuses me, Jeremy. I hate looking, maybe it means nothing, but Johnny V rode him in this race, the maiden race, and he's not riding him here. He's riding Maycock's Bay, who you would never think he would opt for a horse like that over Royal Slipper.
Right.
So I thought, well, maybe there was a possibility that Joel Rosario was supposed to ride him that day and couldn't or didn't, and he was just kind of filling in. But Joel rode that day at Keeneland, so that wasn't it. So I just don't understand the rider switch here. It's not like Joel doesn't ride for Wesley. In fact, he's one of his main guys anyway. So confusing. It may mean nothing. It may mean that I could ride him and that he could still win. I don't know, but I do like him. This is a filly, I should say. He's a filly, not a colt, which is another thing that really impresses me, because Wesley's doing things here that he wouldn't normally do with a filly unless he thought she was extraordinary. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And for her to come back against Poltz, I mean, coming back in 3 weeks against the boys, What's the purpose of that? Unless he figures it doesn't matter. She's going to wire them anyway. He knows better than I do.
Well, he's got the exact same race on Friday. They could have come back into Myrtlewood. So I'm thinking the way maybe this went is they weren't going to enter back.
Right.
And that's why Velasquez was already committed then, that Johnny was already committed to ride the horse for Mike Stidham. And this might have been a late thought. Like maybe the horse was doing better than they thought, the filly. And I think I called her a colt earlier, so I apologize for that. But yeah, they had the exact same race, the Myrtlewood, today, 24 hours earlier, 6 furlongs, same purse. For the fillies, and Westy's going here against the Colts on Saturday. So interesting on a couple different platforms there, and we'll see. I love the race though, and I think that she's the horse to beat, the filly to beat in this race. Normandy Hero and Valentine Candy also come out of races at the meet where they ran 1-2 in a Lowndes Company. If you're worried about these horses at Keeneland running back quickly in a race like this, last year we saw Key of Life for Brad Cox come back and win the Myrtlewood, the filly version of this race. Second time at the meet, she had won an Lowndes race really impressively earlier in the meet and came right back. So it's not a big deal. It was just done a year ago. So I wouldn't be surprised. Normandy Hero, Valentine Candy, Royal Slipper, the first 3 right from the rail are all horses who are run back second time at the meet. And any of those would not be any surprise in here. I think they're all very capable in the Bowman Mill. Let's switch up to the Bryan Station. This is 3-year-olds on the turf here going a mile, grade 3 company at Keeneland. This is the sister brother race, if you will, to what we're going to see today. The Valley View for 3-year-old fillies is on Friday. So the Colts get their chance, and 3-year-old turf company here. Talk of the Nation down on the rail, 5-2 in the morning line for trainer Shug McGahee, one of the favorites. McGahee has won the turf race, the final race on the card, the last 2 days at Keeneland on Wednesday and Thursday. So Shug's turf horses are running well at the meet. Talk of the Nation comes off a win in the Gun Runner at Kentucky Downs. But Jeff, nobody looked more impressively than the Jefferson Cup final 1/8 of a mile for More Than Looks, who's going to be the favorite here in the Bryan Station. Let's give the fans a chance to see that one, and then you can react to it.
The turn in front by 4. Smoky Mandate set down for the drive now, and quickly closing in is Smoky Mandate. Gaslight Dancer trying to ward off Smoky Mandate, who's rallied to the front. In the meantime, More Than Looks like a rocket down the center of the course is coming after Smoky Mandate, and More Than Looks looked hopeless with 3 furlongs to go, and it's on the wire, winning by 3. More Than Looks. What a sensational late kick that was. Smoky Mandate was second.
Galloped out about 8 in front. So More Than Looks with a repeat of that effort is going to be awfully strong. And I give credit in here to trainer Cherie DeVoe for bringing this horse back in a logical spot, right? Jefferson Cup, $200,000 listed stakes, comes back in the Bryan Station, grade 3, $300,000. That race was really exciting, and that can make you overzealous to see that and think, wow, we really have something, and throw a horse into the deep end somewhere. This looks really measured and smart. This is a good spot.
Especially when you figure that what you just saw would give you hope that he's good now, and wait till you see him as a 4-year-old. Why thwart the momentum and the development by doing something out of that he'll have plenty of opportunities to do next year, and that is tackle on the biggies, and as a 4-year-old, who knows how good he'll be. I was watching that race. I kind of thought that he probably would win the race. He was favored. And at the 3/8 ball, I'm thinking, well, he can still win it, but he's going to have to be Zenyatta or something like that. And yet he went wide, circled the pack, just went by them that were standing still. Shockingly, he won that race by almost 3 lengths when it barely looked like he was going to hit the board at the 8th hole. He's in the 9-hole here, but good news for him is that there looks to be plenty of speed in this race to set things up. I mean, I don't know how fast they'll go, but they certainly won't be crawling. Not that it matters, because he came against 3/4 and 12 flat to finish out in 36 and 2. And that's the final quarter of a mile. So how fast did he go in the last quarter of a mile in that race? So regardless of what the pace is going to be, I think he'll win it. But if it's faster than par, that'll only help him. And I think he's going to sweep on by and make him stamp his position as one of the most promising 3-turning 4-year-old older grass horses next year. More Than Looks should go about its business and win this race.
No lack of big barn influence in the Bryan Station. You've got Pletcher, you got Chad Brown, you got Shug McGahee, you got a couple Mike Makers in there. Cherie DeVoe's got the ace in the hand, though, with more than looks based off that last start. I could see that as a Pegasus World Cup turf kind of
Absolutely.
horse when we get to January, right? A good race here, get another good race over the winter, and this is a horse who's really moving forward towards a race like that at what I believe is 1 1/8 miles on the turf off the top of my head. So that would be the kind of progress that you would want to see and not throw into the deep end too quickly. This one, another race, and then maybe a shot against the big boys later on if he keeps progressing. Let's go to the Fayette Stakes. It's the feature race on closing day at Keeneland. Again, race number 9 on the card. Grade 2, $350,000. This is our express bet race of the week. You can get my full analysis on all the contenders in your email inbox when you sign up for the email newsletter at Express Bet and First Bet. Also, check out the blog sections at First Bet and Express Bet, and you'll get my full write-up of the race. Jeff, I ended up going with the 3-year-old in here, Il Miracolo. We've seen this horse throughout the course of the season, following in that Gulfstream in the winter. He's better now than he's ever been. I thought his races in the Curlin at Saratoga, the Smarty Jones and the PA Derby at Parks were among the best races we've seen from him. And Luis Saez has ridden him twice to a win and a second-place finish, and he gets in light here at 118, gets a few pounds off. I went with Il Miracolo as my top choice in here. We want to note that Film Star, the one, is expected to scratch. We already talked about that, to run in the 49er stakes at Belmont at Aqueduct. So we expect Film Star to come out of this one. I'm on Il Miracolo. What say you?
No, I had to use a perfectly logical selection, Il Miracolo, based on his Smarty Jones win. I took a shot here with a price. With Film Star out of the race, or logically, that's how I'm handicapping. I think the pace scenario probably will be relatively comfortable, and that's good, because I'm going to try a 15-1 shot here. He may not be 15-1, but he's 15-1 on the morning line. That's Twilight Blue. Now, I watched his last race, the allowance race, the prep race for this race that was won by Dash Attack, who's back in here as well. And Twilight Blue, in watching the race, he was going really easily till about the 8th pole, and then you could really see the layoff effect of he just like, all right, he just, his head went up, he got tired, he tried, but he was just absolutely flat out dead short. And he ran second in a race that I'm absolutely convinced he needed badly. Still earned a 97 Beyer number, which was a career top. And I think this horse now will, with that race under his belt and enough time in between races, he's had 2 really good breezes since then. I think you're going to see him step forward considerably in his second start off a layoff, which Joe Sharp has very good stats with. And if he's in position to be sitting second or third early on without having to be sent hard, I mean, I think he's got a chance. His numbers make him better than 15-1. I mean, he's right there with most of these. He's never been a Churchill, but he's been first or second 9 out of 13 starts. So he's a trier. He's going to be in the right spot. If he makes a forward move at all, he's right there, and he's at 15-1. He's worth a gamble to me in a race where I could see the horse that you liked very easily, Il Miracolo, and a few others. But I think Twilight Blue is as good as any of them. And, he doesn't quite have the resume, but I think he's got the numbers. Twilight Blue for me at a price, maybe to pull off an upset in the Fayette.
Good thing for you. Joe Sharp's long distance horses at Keeneland really perform well. This 1 1/8 miles, he knows which horses to bring and run long there. The longer they go, the better his horses seem to run at Keeneland. That's a good sign. If you're handicapping this race and looking at some of the Woodward alumni in here, again, we're talking about the race Film Star was in and ran second, but Law Professor is also in this game, and there's another one in here who came out of the Woodward. That was O'Connor. So Law Professor and O'Connor both come out of that race. You're going to get to see what Film Star does about 20 minutes before this race. Post time for the 49er is about 20 minutes before. So if you want to kind of get a little bit of sense of, little barometer, if you will, on the quality of that race for those other horses, if Film Star comes back and runs through the screen at Belmont at Aqueduct, maybe you move those Woodward horses up a little bit who are back in this particular spot. That's the racing at Keeneland on Saturday. Again, $2,000 late pick 4 hit and split Friday and Saturday. Final 2 days of the racing meet at Keeneland still to come. Let's look next where we're headed to Santa Anita on this edition of the First Call podcast. Santa Anita Saturday feature, as we are 1 week away from the Breeders' Cup coming back to Santa Anita. The Lure Stakes, the Lure named for the brilliant turf miler, 2-time winner of the Breeders' Cup Mile. And if this race was not a turf mile, Jeff, we would cause an inquiry. But it is a turf mile at Santa Anita, the Lure. It's the only thing it could possibly be. What do you make here in race number 9 Saturday?
Good race. A good secondary race here. It's only an $80,000 purse, which is a shame because they wrote this as an overnight stake, which means they can't exceed a certain amount of money apparently in the purse, because these horses should be running for a lot more than that. These are good horses.
Yeah.
And I will say this. You have a number of horses in this race. I mean, Astronomer just got beat a neck in the City of Hope Mile Grade 2 event. That was a good race. Iridale has won some big races in his career for sure. Has hit the road. I mean, Easter's a dangerous Saratoga shipper. You could make a case for him.
Right.
I'm going to go with Bally's Charm here, coming through the allowance ranks. I know he's a Calbred. He is a stakes winner. And I remember him running back when he was a three-year-old last year. He was a really, really promising horse. Was off a long time, almost a year. Came back, was absolutely fit to run about a half mile in the California Dreamin', but it was a Calvert race, so Jeff Mullins threw him in the race, and he ran to about as far as he was fit. Then he comes back, he backs up a little bit, runs in an allowance race over this course and distance, over a very good allowance race, runs a mile in 32 and 3, gate to wire, one with something left.
Yeah.
And he is the controlling speed again. And you put this horse on the lead here, he can be tough. Now, Astronomer was on the lead in the City of Hope, but he didn't go fast at all. He's nowhere near as quick as Bally's Charm is. And if Bally's Charm makes the same kind of forward move today as he did between his last race in the California Dreamin', which was his first off the long layoff, I think he's got a really good chance to wire the field at 5-1.
Let's go back with Frank Miramati to see that win at Santa Anita last out.
Next, and down at the rail, Eastern Ocean, there's an 1/8 of a mile to go, and Bally's Charm still with a 2.5 length lead. Tio Magico is finishing with some interest in the center of the race course, but with a 16th to run, Bally's Charm maintaining a nice lead, and it's Bally's Charm. Hector Berrios put them to sleep and took them coast to coast.
Good ride there by Berrios, as pointed out by Frank. And, you mentioned this race for an $80,000 purse. 5 horses are coming out of grade 2s. A 6th horse is coming out of a $2 million race at Kentucky Downs. I mean, for 80 grand, quite a field in the Lure.
And by the way, that last race we saw, it looked like he got an easy lead. He went 45 and 3, 109 flat. Now, I know the course is quick and all that, but even if you allow for that, that's still not an easy lead. He just ran everybody off his feet. And he's one of these kind of horses that can go slow or go fast. It doesn't matter. He keeps on going. And now that it's making his third start off a layoff with a really sharp half-mile breeze since that race on the dirt, I just think he's a good thing at 5-1.
The Lure Stakes on the turf will be part of the Turf Pick 3 on Saturday at Santa Anita. Remember, when you play the Turf Pick 3 with First Bet and Express Bet, whatever you win, you get 10% more. There's a 10% winnings boost when you hit the Turf Pick 3 every day of the Santa Anita meet when you play with First Bet and Express Bet. Be sure to opt into the promos, but take advantage of it. If you're going to play a Keeneland Turf Pick 3, it is ridiculous to play it anywhere else when First Bet and Express Bet are going to give you 10% more back every time you win. No catch, no strings attached to it. 10% winnings boost on the Keeneland Turf Pick 3. It's a must play with First Bet and Express Bet. Let's go to Sunday now for a couple stakes races as we find a pair at Churchill Downs on the opening day of the autumn meet that will run through Thanksgiving weekend in Louisville. The Rags to Riches Stakes for the fillies, the Street Sense for the colts. These are 2-year-olds. In fact, there's nothing but 2-year-olds on the entire card at Churchill Downs on Sunday. It's part of their Stars of Tomorrow program. Jeff Siegel, we are going to start things off in the Rags to Riches, named for the Kentucky Oaks and Belmont winner from that just brilliant crop in 2007. You go back and you think about Street Sense, Curlin, Hard Spun, Any Given Saturday, Rags to Riches. 2007 was as good a 3-year-old crop as we've had in the last 20 years in horse racing, and the Rags to Riches named for her. She was a brilliant Oaks winner, historic winner of the Belmont Stakes, and she's got a mile to 16th stakes in her honor here as these fillies try to make a name for themselves.
Yeah, you got Vivi's Dream here at 6-5. Second in the Alcibiades at Keeneland, where she just got flat out got beat by Candied, and I'm very curious to see how Candy runs in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, because that might be a really good filly.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I'm a little worried about VV's Dream, I might be, reading more into it than it is, because if you look at her form, her numbers are solid, but they are what they are.
Mm-hmm.
She ran hard, and she's coming back in 3 weeks. Kind of laid her body down, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, before that, she ran pretty hard when she won the Pocahontas. So this is a lot to ask a 2-year-old filly, and I don't know how much she's going to have left in the tank. Which maybe she's got plenty. I don't know, but I can tell you, when you're taking 6-5, you don't want to be asking that kind of question. Now, on the other hand,
and why aren't you in the Breeders' Cup, right? You just ran second, beating a length in the Alcibiades. You won the Pocahontas by 8 3/4. This is the path easier traveled. Is that a good sign? Like you said, how much is left in the tank if you're willing to do this one and not go to California for the Breeders' Cup? I find that interesting.
I do, and that's another problem that I have. I mean, she's certainly on pure resume should be in the top 4, wouldn't you think, in the division or something like that?
Right.
And even if you don't win it, what's wrong with finishing in the money in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies? It looks pretty good in the catalog page. Anyway, excuse me. That and the 6-5 morning line takes me off of her and puts me on Twirling Good Time. Mm-hmm. I don't know how good Twirling Good Time is, and I don't know. I mean, she goes against some of my principles. Like I like to see the 2 sprints in the stretch out pattern as opposed to the 1 sprint at 5.5 in the stretch out. But this really might be extraordinary, at least based on what I saw in her racing debut. Now, she won her first start going 5.5. She didn't even break in the race. Mm-hmm. And what I liked about the race is that while she did show good speed to get into contention after the sluggish beginning, she didn't run off the page. She moved up and then she sat. Mm-hmm. And I like that. She showed some sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when she was chirped to and asked to kick on with it, she not only did she kick on with it and won by 4, she earned a giant 86 by her number, and she galloped out from here to the Louisville Cardinal football stadium. I mean, they couldn't even pull her up. So I thought it was a tremendous work. Since that race, she's been giving plenty of time. I like the fact that she's had time in between races. She's had 3 good works for her to show her trainer that maybe she can get a distance around.
Yeah.
She's 4-1 in the morning line, and I think she has a chance to really be good. I mean, really be good. So I'm going to try to beat the suspect VV's Dream, who may, go about her business and win anyway, or a much better price Twirling Good Time.
Phil Bauer, her trainers, had an excellent Keeneland meet, a couple big allowance wins, and horses just really ran strong too. Not just got to the winner's circle, but won impressively. So the Bauer stable going well. We'll see if Twirling Good Time can continue the role she set in her debut.
Roses racing third, 5 lengths back to Renfrew and Willowy. They're off the turn. Twirling Good Time takes over, opens up by 3 with a furlong to go. Blue Squall comes off the rail with a late run. Silver Rose fights on now third. Final 16th, Twirling Good Time, clear by 4. Blue Squall runs up into second, but is second best to Twirling Good Time, who's under the wire to win it by 3.5. Blue Squall was second. Silver Rose was third. Yes, to Champagne finished 4th.
So Twirling Good Time, we'll see how good she can be, and maybe we'll get a sense of Candied for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. We're trying to evaluate these young 2-year-olds on a national and international scale towards the Breeders' Cup. You have the 2nd and 4th place finishers in the Alcibiades coming back in this race. If neither of those is very effective, then maybe you downgrade Candied a little bit when you look at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies and the quality of her win in the Alcibiades. If these two run off the page in here with VV's Dream and Shimmering Allure, and they run 1-2 and win easily, maybe you'll think that the Alcibiades must have been very strong by Candied. So give us a little bit of a sense to try to get a gauge on that runner towards the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Let's talk Breeders' Cup Juvenile Colt winner Street Sense next. We talked about that class of 2007. Street Sense is the stakes race that the 2-year-olds will run in on Saturday at Churchill, or Sunday, I should say, at Churchill Downs, named for that year's 2006 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, and then class of 2007 winner of the Kentucky Derby and the Travers Stakes. Street Sense, a fabulous, fabulous horse. The grade 3 race at 1 1/16 over the track he loved. If any of these horses like Churchill Downs as much as Street Sense did, we're in for a treat.
That's for sure. This is an interesting race here, Jeremy, because we have another Star of the Future entrant in here. in Parchment Party, who we featured after he broke his maiden in a race he wasn't even ready to run in, I don't think. And I think Dilmont just threw him in the race because he wasn't training like anything special. And he figured, well, one race is worth about 5 works. So, he probably told Graham, let him break and let him be where he wants to be. And, don't ask him to the top of the stretch. Let him finish, gallop out good. Maybe we'll learn something. Maybe he'll learn something. He goes about and he wins the race. he just like, what are you talking about? I mean, and he did it in such a style. I think the connections had to be really surprised. And he ran like a colt that had really, he did everything right. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he came through on the inside. He probably got 5 races of experience in that one race. And then he galloped out, like a horse that was just getting started. He's a June foal, so he's much younger than most of his competition. I think that also factored in the fact that they didn't do a whole lot with him. They didn't, again, not expecting to win, but maybe build get some experience in him, and then maybe in the winter he'll move forward. I guess that plan has been accelerated a little bit here.
Yeah. And
I'm really interested to see how much, if any, he improves, because he's going to lag back again. But he's already been 2 turns. I think that's important. And how about this, Jeremy? He's had 4 workouts since that race. I love the timing in between that race and this one. He worked 47 and 4th, 6 fastest at 36. He's most recent 48 breezing, 3rd fastest at 38. I guarantee you, he didn't work like this before his first race.
Right.
So you talk about a light switch. The neon light might have gone on with this. Forget about the light switch. And I'm really curious to see what we're going to see in this race. He might be an important colt, and being by constitution out of America by Tisnow, he is bred to run from here to forever. So let's watch Parchment Party. Maybe at 5-1 he's a gamble, but I'm going to be really watching this race for future reference.
I think you made a really good point there, and want to just kind of emphasize it for people, because it's not just handicapping this particular horse, Parchment Party, but that's a good workout analysis for people who don't get to see the works every morning. If you don't have the video or a workout report, that kind of deal like that, is when horses have works before a race and after a race, look at the rankings, how they are in the mornings, or even just kind of look at the raw times. If this horse was used to working in 50 and now suddenly is working in 48, that's where you're starting to see that massive improvement. If a horse used to be 30th of 40 in the morning in the workouts, and now it's 3rd of 40 in the mornings, that's a difference. And that's what you're talking about, that light bulb switch going on. That doesn't matter if you're talking older horses, younger horses, no matter what circuit you play. If you can see that pattern in the workout tab, workouts on their own, just on raw times, are really difficult to trust. But the pattern of the workouts, the spacing of the days, you don't want to see a lot of big gaps in between works and things like that. Every 7 to 10 days, they got to be back out there working. Some trainers will even be 5 and 6 days, when a horse is really in their high gear, like Jerry Hollendorfer used to be, every 5, 6, 7 days back on a workout. But get to know the patterns for the trainers, and get to know the pattern of that horse as you look back across those workout lines. Okay, how do they work going into this race? How do they work going into that race? And how are they working going into today's race? And if you see a major improvement in that, maybe that's one that you can say they're moving the right direction.
I think so.
Well, let's see the education that Parchment Party got in the morning, because you explained it well. Here it is. Watch on the inside. And who was it? James Graham that day got through and really just had a lot of horse in the end.
Warp 9 with a big move on the far turn, needs to find a way through. Got stopped right at the 3/16. In the meantime, Django's coming down the center, and Parchment Party's got a shot too. And so too Allied Victory, wide open for long to go. Django outside, Parchment Party inside. These two go on with it. Parchment Party coming up the rail. Parchment Party got it on the wire. Parchment Party first, Django second, Warp 9 was third, tight for 4th, Allied Victory, Collins, or Black Diamond.
This race will not be easy, though. You've got a horse by Audible named Moonlight coming in off an 8-length win in New York for Todd Pletcher. And then Kenny McPeak, he's doing the same thing with his Colts that he did with his Phillies. We see that the 2-4 finishers of the Alcibiades don't go to the Breeders' Cup. They come here instead. Well, he's got the 3-4 finishers in the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland, who were behind Locked and the Wine Steward. And they're back in this race in Generous Tipper and Northern Flame. So again, if you want to kind of get a measure on how Locked looks towards the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, see how these horses perform here in the street sense. You would expect, coming out of the grade 1 and against the top Breeders' Cup contender, that these horses should match up pretty well in this race. And if they don't, maybe you downgrade Locked a little bit. And if they do, you upgrade Locked.
Looking at the buyer numbers in this race, and you talk about Generous Tipper, who put together 2 races, his maiden win by 7, which was impressive at Ellis Park, and then a reasonable third in the Breeders' Cup Futurity. In both those races, he earned an 86 buyer, as compared to Parchment Party, who only earned a 69. So there's a massive gap that Parchment Party is going to have to make up if he's going to come back and win against not only Generous Tipper, but several others in here. You mentioned Moonlight. All he did was earn a 90 buyer number in an off-the-turf race. This is a rather significant step up in class for Parchment Party, which means that if I want to gamble on Parchment Party, I'm going to have to get the price I need. I mean, I don't want to take a short price on a horse that's going to be asked to do something like that. I think he might have it in him, but you better have the price. And I would have expected to get more than 5-1, quite frankly. Okay. I think I will. And then I can gamble. And if if he's not up to it, okay, I can live with it. But I'm not taking a short price on a horse that has to make up that much ground. So it's a really interesting race, a good race at Churchill on Sunday. Set the stage for the Kentucky Jockey Club later in the meeting. And you might find some very important 3-year-old Derby type horses exiting this race down the road. So it's certainly worth watching.
If you'd like to get involved next week in the High Roller Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, one of the biggest handicapping tournaments in the country, this weekend's a chance you can get there. There are 2 $1,000 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge qualifiers at expressbet.com on Saturday and Sunday, both taking part with Santa Anita Racing. So $1,000 to get involved in those tournaments Saturday and $1,000 to get involved in the tournament on Sunday. The Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge qualifiers. If $1,000's a little steep for you, you can make it in today. There's time to play today on Friday in the $80 Santa Anita feeder tournament. So play the contest today at Santa Anita for $80. That could earn you the $1,000 entry fee and the automatic qualifier into a tournament this weekend, Saturday or Sunday. And then if you can get through the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge qualifier this weekend, you're playing on house money then at Breeders' Cup in the big one with a chance to make a life-changing score. So good luck to tournament players playing this weekend at ExpressBet and on track at Santa Anita as well. Breeders' Crown, I'd be remiss if I did not mention that. That is the Breeders' Cup for harness racing tonight, Friday, and tomorrow, Saturday. It's the same format that we see at the Breeders' Cup with the 2-year-old races tonight at Hoosier Park, and then all the other championship stakes races in the Breeders' Crown series for harness racing on Saturday at Hoosier Park. Al Samaglia, our resident harness handicapper's got you covered. He's got blogs. He's got videos. Check out the blog section at expressbet.com and at news.first.com and get all of Al's look at the Breeders' Crown. So a lot shaking. The wheels will be rolling tonight at Hoosier and tomorrow as well, Jeff. And all the workouts that we would want to possibly evaluate are going to take part over the next few days. The gallops, the breezes, the hard works. Many of the hard works are done as of last week, but White Abarrio was on the track this morning after having a second workout of his Santa Anita stay nixed. He worked this morning at 59 and change for 5 furlongs. So maybe White Abarrio's got things figured out with that hoof issue, the shoeing issue that that the stable has talked about. We'll see how he bounces back from this workout. And if he's back on the track in a day, usually a day after a work, you'll just walk the shed row. I want to see White Abarrio after this hard work today back on the track by Sunday, you would say, and starting that progress towards the Breeders' Cup. Go Rocket Ride was supposed to work this morning. They scrapped the workout and said they're going to try to go tomorrow. We talked about it on our Tuesday podcast. Things have not gone well for Go Rocket Ride leading up to the Classic, and that's just another kind of red flag that doesn't seem to be working in his favor.
We talked about being worried. I think we're more worried now than we were 3 days ago for him. White Abarrio, he worked in the dark. I watched the work. He was pretty much through the lane. So I'm looking elsewhere. I'm worried on both of those horses. Right. One, I'm not so sure he's going to run, and the other one, I agree with you. I mean, I think you had the right idea with White Abarrio. I don't think he's a 1.25 mile horse, regardless. And the fact I don't like seeing horses miss workouts, and supposed to work on on Monday, and now it's Friday.
Right.
I don't like that at all. But we've got good racing this week, Jeremy, don't you think? I mean, these are good,
absolutely.
interesting races, and maybe we'll make enough money this week to pay for the DRF, pre-entries, TPs. I don't know. We're going to have to get lucky to do that, but hopefully
if you
we
can
make
scrap
enough.
together $40 to $60,
I mean, we're going to have to be right this weekend. Otherwise, we're going to be guessing next week, I think.
Yeah,
I
absolutely. Hey, this is a big Friday for handicapping 2 stakes races because there are 5 stakes races between Keeneland with 2, and NYRA's got 3 on the card today at Belmont at Aqueduct. Remington's got the Clever Trevor tonight, the prep for the Springboard Mile, the 2-year-olds at the end of their season. So a good stakes day. Again, Breeders' Crown tonight. So a lot cooking Friday into the weekend. Good luck to everybody out there playing the races this weekend. Be sure to check out XBTV for all the workout coverage on demand. You'll be able to get all the workouts. Click on them. They're organized by division. They've done a great job there getting the works over the past couple of weeks. The Breeders' Cup newsfeed team will be in town now and tracking a lot of the works. They got the saddle towels now with the numbers and a little easier to track the horses in the morning as well. So a lot cooking on the Breeders' Cup work front. Go to access the wager guide right now. First.com, 1st.com/guide, and go download and access the free Breeders' Cup wager guide, and it'll get you prepped up for this weekend. We'll get handicapping after Monday's post position draw. When Jeff and I see you next on Tuesday for our It's Official podcast, it'll be Breeders' Cup week edition, and we will know the fields for all 14 Breeders' Cup races. They will all be drawn on Monday, so it is a don't miss edition coming up of the It's Official podcast this Tuesday. Jeff, final words, say goodnight.
Good night. I mean, everybody, a good weekend of racing, and we're going to get down and dirty. Can't wait to handicap. I've already done quite a bit, Jeremy, and I've got some revelations, which we will share next week, and it's going to be fun.
On behalf of everybody with First Technologies and Jeff Siegel, I'm Jeremy Plonk. Talk to you later.